Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Sanchez. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I am also a spiritual care provider. I am getting a certificate in spirituality, but I have been studying spiritual logic for over 30 years with biblical influence. And I'm also a professor at a university for graduate and undergraduate social work students. And what I'm here to talk about today is the problem of overgeneralization. Overgeneralization is the root problem in almost every mental health illness, every war, every social conflict, and at the root of all oppression and marginalization. And I want to talk about this today because it's a mistake that we all tend to make. So, when we experience life, as we experience life, we all encounter a constant stream of data. This data is processed through our five senses and communication, verbal and nonverbal, and experiences in our community and in our upbringing. And this data shapes our attachment styles, our codependency styles, our relationship and communication styles, and really shapes our reality because along with receiving all that data, we come from an upbringing and go through layers of different kinds of education, formal, informal, media, non-media, that teach us how to process this information. And the problem is that what society often doesn't talk about is how to be literate to process your own information. And so this is the value and benefit of having highly skilled and trained people to teach you how to process information and unlearn maladaptive forms of processing information. The other challenge with this is that as we develop our capacity to process information at one developmental layer does not mean that's useful processing at a higher developmental layer. It might mean that we retain that knowledge and information, but we need to grow more robust ways of processing our data, our experiential data. Or it might mean we need to shed some things if a lot of pathology or harm happened in those prior layers. But what I want to talk about here is this algebraically. So if in our real world experience, let's just algebraically say on any given day, I process this layer of letters for an hour, means this is my data of experience for an hour. Okay, so I've got a bunch of lowercase letters, smaller case letters, beginning of alphabet letters, end of alphabet letters. And in all of this, our brain, we already know through neurological research that our brain cannot process all of its sensory perception. So what the brain does is it filters. And this cognitive filter decides which data is relevant, which isn't. And because there's too much data to process, it's constantly snipping and cutting out what it thinks is not relevant. And often this leads to cognitive bias of what we anticipate we're going to see. So if I anticipate behind me, this is a papaya plant, but there's a leaf on there that doesn't look like a papaya, then my brain will naturally filter out the anomaly. Unless there's something in my brain that has already taught me to detect anomalies as some kind of threat, then I'm going to focus in on the anomaly and question the identity of this plant. And there's a lot more, we can talk about that another time. But the point is the brain is constantly snipping. The other thing is that due to the limitations of our physicality, our blinking, our head turn, we can only see a tiny narrow range of everything we're experiencing. What that means is on a different layer, we are not able to process all the things that parts of our sensory is telling us. And so we have a very blind component, especially in our visual sphere, but even the sensory data that we process physically through our touch, we have a very blind dimension of this. So in some ways, we have too much information, we snip. But in other ways, we are missing vast amounts of data. So what I see happening between two people on the street talking, I don't have enough data to know what's going on. If I see a car speed up really quickly to a girl walking down the street, and she looks angry and won't get in the car, and then the car door opens, she gets in and it speeds off, I don't have enough information this actually happened yesterday, to know, are they in a fight? Is this a human trafficking problem? Or maybe she just needed to take a break and was in a hurry and now has to rush off to work. I don't have all that. So my brain, through my gestalt, and gestalt is how we interpret all of the background noise that we process, will make up a story and decide based on probability of what my known experience tells me, will make up a story of what's probably happening. And based on what my brain decides is the culmination of all of that sensory data right here, is going to organize it into categories. So in that hour, I'm going to say, oh, well, this data, these are all caps, and these are all the lowercase. It's the easiest form my brain knows how to, or I could have said all A's, all B's, all C's, all D's, all X's, all Y's, all Z's, which is more complex. But what my brain will probably do is oversimplify all caps, all lowercase. Okay, now, obviously, what this translates to in real life is my brain will probably say Black people, white people, religious people, non-religious people, mean people, non-mean people, obese people, non-obese people, colonists, we overgeneralize into these broad categories: boss, worker, etc. And so in doing so, we decide, and then we assign meaning to those variables. Okay, this is all caps. These are the lies. We're going to filter those out. And these lower cases are going to be my truth. I'm going to hold on to these. And then my brain is going to say, what do I do with all this? Based on my particular experience or what I think media is telling me is the experience and my natural capacity as a human to flock. I'm going to decide, what does all this mean? And I'm going to interpret this through multiple layers, including what a lot of media logic tells me to interpret to if you want to belong. This is how you're going to lens this. So I've cut out these, broken it into groups. I've overgeneralized based on ethnicity, based on time frames, based on perceptual experience, whatever that is. And then I make a judgment about reality. And so this is where a lot of problematic thinking happens, because I've oversimplified based on the wrong categories that I've been told to simplify by, that media is often teaching me to simplify by, which is called media logic, which often leads me down a road of catastrophe, often leads me down a road of marginalization or polarization. And then I find myself very unhappy because what I'm seeing and experiencing is this negative experience, and I'm ignoring the other data. So in the field of social work, or in the occupation of working with humans, or even just in the experience of watching media, we need to really notice what are the ways we tend to overgeneralize based on what current data or current lenses tell us. If we're operating under the lens of news, which is not real news, it's entertainment to create drama and emotion, to keep us addicted to watching because our brains can't resolve the problem and dilemma, which is what creates the addiction. They're an OCD feedback loop of trying to solve a problem that's not solvable. We're going to lens the world in ways especially dangerous because we either construct a reality that's very oppressive to ourselves or others, or we interpret a reality that's oppressive to ourselves or others. We don't recognize higher powers that protect and can heal some of those issues, or where power exists that we deny or minimize it, or we don't address real issues and real problems where others polarize, marginalize, and we minimize and deny relevant data that we need to look at because our bias favors us. So we tend to either favor a bias that opposes us or a bias that favors us rather than a holistic truth right here that looks at all the variables inside the parentheses of a label. And so this forces us sometimes to have a label that has no nomenclature. Maybe that nomenclature is United States, but what does even United States mean? We are such a diverse mixture within here. So as people who observe media, as social work students, as clients, one of the first things we've got to do is understand the way our brain works and the capacity for beauty, to recognize diversity within a set, and the good and the bad and all the challenges and all the beauty in there, and recognize the capacity to categorize things in ways that are very unhealthy. And this is what we're going to be talking about on a consistent basis. Thank you.